Seth Rollins makes epic return and steals CM Punk's SummerSlam victory. We have all been lied to. Seth Rollins was never injured. His knee injury was scripted all this time just for him to appear at SummerSlam and steal CM Punk's title. We were all fooled. Seth Rollins was never injured. His knee injury was a setup, a brilliantly executed ruse that led to one of the most jaw-dropping moments in SummerSlam history. In this video, we break down Seth Rollins' shocking return, how he stole CM Punk's victory, and what this twist means for the future of WWE. Was this part of a larger plan? Did Triple H know? And most importantly, what's next for CM Punk after this epic betrayal? We were lied to. Every promo, every announcement, every tearful backstage segment that revolved around Seth Rollins' devastating knee injury, it was all part of an illusion. A brilliant, meticulously crafted piece of theater that blurred the lines between reality and fiction, truth and deception. In a world where kayfabe has long been declared dead, Seth Rollins just resurrected it and used it to shatter CM Punk's comeback in front of the entire WWE Universe. SummerSlam 2025 was meant to be a coronation. CM Punk had scratched, clawed, and fought his way back to the top of WWE. After more than a decade of tension, rebellion, walkouts, and real-life grudges, he was finally poised to reclaim his crown in what was billed as his last chance at legacy redemption. Fans believed it. Commentators reinforced it. Even critics who once doubted Punk's passion for wrestling had begun to turn. This was supposed to be his moment. And for the first 35 minutes of that title match, it was. Punk went toe-to-toe with Solo Sikoa, who had arrived at SummerSlam carrying all the fury of the Bloodline's new regime. With Roman Reigns absent and the throne up for grabs, Solo wasn't just defending a championship, he was defending a legacy. And Punk, older, bruised, perhaps a step slower than the man who called himself best in the world a decade ago, was nonetheless the crowd's undeniable favorite. But as Punk locked Solo in the Anaconda Vice and the referee hovered nearby, ready to declare a new champion, the lights dimmed. Not all the way, just slightly enough to stir confusion. A beat later, the Titantron flashed with static. Not a logo. Not an entrance video. Static. Then darkness. And then, a silhouette. A boot. A flame. A burn-it-down scream that exploded into a pop so deafening, even the referee froze. The crowd rose to their feet in a mixture of disbelief and euphoria. There was no entrance music. No countdown. Just Seth Rollins sprinting down the ramp, knees seemingly untouched, dressed in all black, steel chair in hand. It happened so fast, so violently, that fans could barely register it before it was over. The chair struck CM Punk's spine with the kind of vengeance only years of buried resentment could fuel. Another shot to the shoulder. Then the knee. And finally, a curb stomp onto the very chair he had carried in. The referee was pulled away. Solo was dragged atop Punk's unconscious body. And 3 seconds later, the match was over. Solo retained. Punk was broken. But the real story was Seth. Because the man we were told had torn his MCL and was facing a 9-month recovery, had just walked into SummerSlam with 0 signs of impairment. No brace. No limp. No scar. Nothing but fire in his eyes. And the sickest part? It worked. The fans cheered. They chanted. Half in shock. Half in awe. Everyone asked the same question. Was he ever really injured? In the hours that followed, WWE's social media team went silent. No recap video. No official statement. Nothing from Rollins himself. Just silence, the kind that suffocates a community desperate for answers. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, insiders began to talk. Quietly at first. Then louder. Whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs into suspicion. The injury? Scripted. The physical therapy updates? Pre-recorded. The backstage videos of Rollins wincing in pain and promising to return stronger than ever? Carefully timed distractions. This wasn't a comeback. It was a con. Sources close to WWE medical staff began leaking fragments. Seth had checked into rehab, yes, but never stayed overnight. He'd been spotted leaving facilities with no visible assistance. Some claimed he had never even seen a surgeon. And while Triple H remained tight-lipped in the post-show press conference, one sentence from his prepared remarks stood out like a bloodstain on a white shirt. Tonight was about surprises. The best stories are the ones that make you question everything. Question everything? Fans did. And what they found sent shockwaves through the WWE Universe. Archived footage revealed inconsistencies in the original injury report. On the January 13th episode of Raw, Rollins clutched his knee after a brutal attack by Braun Breaker. The cameras cut to black. The show ended on a somber note. But the leaked alternate angle, posted just days later by a foreign broadcast team, showed something different. Rollins walking up the ramp unassisted. Limping slightly, yes, but then smirking as he disappeared backstage. At the time, it seemed like showmanship. Now, it feels like a confession in plain sight. More damning still were the cryptic tweets Rollins had posted in the weeks following his surgery. Tweets like, "Sometimes the best way to win is to disappear." Or, "You'll forget I'm watching. Until I'm standing over you." Fans retweeted them for motivation. They printed the quotes on merch. But looking back, it was all part of the illusion. Then came the backstage footage supposedly accidentally released of CM Punk visiting Rollins in a physical therapy center in early July. At the time, it was hailed as a rare moment of unity, a softening of the bitter real-life rivalry that had plagued them for years. Punk was seen holding Rollins' arm, talking about SummerSlam, wishing him a speedy recovery. The footage was raw, authentic, emotional. But as internet sleuths later discovered, it had been filmed weeks earlier, not in July, but in May, before Punk had even been confirmed as the #1 contender. Every step, every tweet, every interview was part of a masterpiece in manipulation. And the man at the center of it? Seth Rollins. The architect. The visionary. And now, the deceiver. But why? Why fake an injury? Why disappear, allow CM Punk to build momentum, hype a legacy fight, only to return and shatter it in seconds? The answer, as it turns out, may go far beyond personal vendetta. According to several anonymous sources within WWE's creative team, this storyline was plotted nearly 6 months ago, not as a twist of convenience, but as a deliberate masterstroke to dethrone both Punk and the Bloodline from the conversation. One writer, speaking on condition of anonymity, described the plan as the ultimate misdirection. The kind that hasn't been done since the days of Attitude Era-level mind games. And the most unsettling part? Triple H allegedly signed off on it. Think about that. The COO of WWE, the man fans have praised for his transparency, long-term storytelling, and revitalization of the roster, knowingly allowed one of the biggest superstars in the company to fake an injury, deceive fans for months, and return under the guise of emotional redemption only to destroy the crowd's favorite. If true, this isn't just a storyline. It's a case study in psychological warfare. But was Punk in on it? That remains unclear. Some believe he was. That Punk, a man who once walked away from WWE for not being treated with respect, would never allow himself to be humiliated unless it served a greater purpose. Others argue that his post-match reaction tells the true story. Because when the final bell rang, when Solo's music faded and Rollins stood atop the ramp with a crooked smile, CM Punk didn't stir. He didn't fight back. He didn't even roll out of the ring. He lay there, motionless, face buried in the mat, defeated. And when cameras caught him being helped to the back, there was no performance, no wink to the crowd. Just a broken man, betrayed not only by a fellow wrestler, but by the very system he had dared to believe in again. Social media imploded. #Seth was never injured trended worldwide within an hour. WWE's Instagram comment sections were flooded with accusations. You played us. This is next-level gaslighting. Punk deserved better. Others, however, praised the twist. This is cinema. WWE just pulled a Game of Thrones Season 4. Rollins is him. The division was instant, and it was vicious. Even within the locker room, tensions were reportedly high. One SmackDown talent who asked not to be named described the mood backstage as chilled to the bone. We didn't know. We weren't told. We really thought he was hurt. It's like finding out your best friend faked a funeral. Another talent went further. If this is where creative is going now, we're all expendable. Everything's a lie. And maybe that's the point. Maybe this wasn't just a storyline. Maybe Seth Rollins didn't just come back to steal a victory. Maybe he came back to burn down everything. The myths. The promises. The idea that pro wrestling is still about honor, redemption, and legacy. Maybe this was about chaos. Because Rollins didn't raise Solo's hand. He didn't acknowledge the bloodline. He didn't even grab the mic. He just stood there, soaking in the roar of an audience too stunned to cheer or boo, before disappearing into the shadows of the SummerSlam set. No explanation. No justification. Just the wreckage he left behind. As of this recording, neither Rollins nor Punk have commented publicly. WWE has issued a one-sentence statement. Seth Rollins returned at SummerSlam under his own authority. That's it. No apology. No clarification. No promise of fallout. Which begs the question, what happens next? For CM Punk, this was supposed to be his crowning moment. Now it's a stain. A reminder that trust in WWE can still be broken in the most devastating ways. Will he retaliate? Will he walk again? Will he ever forgive? And for Rollins? He didn't return to reclaim a belt. He didn't align with a faction. He didn't even pin his rival. He just made a statement. One that echoes beyond the ring. No one is safe. Not your heroes. Not your villains. Not your beliefs. We were all fooled. And SummerSlam will never be the same again. The night after SummerSlam, a camera reportedly caught CM Punk leaving the Barclays Center alone. No entourage. No security detail. Just a hoodie pulled tightly over his head, a rolling suitcase trailing behind, and the unmistakable limp of a man who hadn't just been physically attacked, but emotionally devastated. The man who once sat cross-legged on the ramp with a live microphone and the entire company in his crosshairs, now vanished into the midnight streets of Brooklyn, leaving behind a trail of silence more deafening than any pipe bomb. No tweet. No press appearance. No cryptic message to fans. Just an eerie, calculated quiet. And the WWE Universe is still reeling. Backstage sources claim that Punk was not informed in advance of the exact nature of the SummerSlam ending. One producer noted that while Punk was told to expect a possible surprise spot, he was allegedly unaware of the extent of Seth Rollins' involvement, or that the return would completely hijack the finish. If that's true, then what unfolded on that stage wasn't just storyline treachery, it was a real-life betrayal. Insiders close to Punk described him as furious, broken, and ready to walk away again. And for a man whose history with WWE has been defined by creative frustration and perceived disrespect, this incident may be the final straw. The image of him, collapsed on the canvas while the crowd roared for his attacker, wasn't just heartbreaking, it was symbolic. It told the audience that even now, even after all the apologies, all the olive branches, all the talk of doing things right this time, CM Punk was still the fall guy. And yet, that may have been the plan all along. Because behind the curtain, in the dim corridors of WWE Creative, there's a darker narrative forming. A narrative that suggests Punk's redemption arc was never meant to end with triumph. That from the moment he walked back through that curtain in 2023, this was the destination: humiliation, defeat, erasure. The perfect full-circle irony for a man who once defied the system, only to be swallowed whole by it. Some believe this was the brainchild of Triple H himself. Reports now indicate that the Rollins injury was pitched during a closed-door creative summit back in February. The logic? Let Punk rise. Let him soak in the fan adoration. Let him believe he's getting a shot at glory. Then pull the rug out from under him, not by an executive decision or corporate firing, but by another wrestler. By Seth Rollins, the ultimate company man with a chip on his shoulder and just enough darkness in his soul to play the part. This wouldn't just break Punk's character. It would shatter his spirit. all while creating one of the most jaw-dropping heel turns in modern WWE history. If true, this wasn't just a booking decision. It was a vendetta. And fans are starting to connect the dots. In the hours after the event, screenshots circulated of past interviews where Triple H spoke about protecting the locker room from toxic egos, where Rollins called himself the gatekeeper of WWE's future. Even Paul Heyman's cryptic WrestleMania promo, "Not everyone who returns belongs here," has been reinterpreted in the cold light of betrayal. But what makes this betrayal so potent, so unforgettable, is the psychology behind it. Seth Rollins didn't return for a title. He didn't cash in a contract or challenge anyone to a match. He came back for one purpose only: to rob CM Punk of his legacy. To taint the only thing Punk had left, the crowd's belief that he still mattered. And the method? Genius. Not a steel cage. Not a ladder match. Not even a run-in with pyro and music. Just a chair, a shadow, and a stomp. In doing so, Rollins sent a message not just to Punk, but to everyone in the locker room. Nothing is sacred. Not comebacks. Not injuries. Not even truth. Everything is a tool. Everyone is a pawn. And Seth is now the player. By Monday morning, the ripple effect was seismic. Pundits were split. Fans were livid. Sponsors, many of whom had invested in the nostalgia of CM Punk's return, began placing quiet calls to WWE corporate. One brand manager, speaking to the Wrestling Journal on Background, admitted that they felt blindsided. "We signed a contract to endorse a comeback story, not a betrayal." Meanwhile, internal memos from WWE marketing leaked on Reddit suggesting that adjustments may be necessary to Punk-centric merchandise strategies. Translation? Punk might be done. And yet, even in the midst of backlash, WWE doubled down. No retraction. No apology. No behind-the-scenes documentary to explain what really happened. Instead, they aired a single, chilling promo on Raw, a slow-motion replay of Rollins' return, set to a haunting orchestral version of his theme song. No narration, just images. The steel chair, Punk's collapse, and the final shot, Rollins walking backstage, smirking into the camera. The caption? "He was never gone. You just weren't ready." It sent the internet into meltdown. Because if Rollins isn't just back, but back as a villain more cunning and cruel than ever before, then the WWE landscape has fundamentally changed. This isn't about good guys and bad guys anymore. This is about manipulation, about narrative control, about who gets to write the final chapter. And CM Punk? He's no longer the author of his own story. In fact, some now speculate that Punk may not return at all, that his silence isn't part of a story, but the end of it. That SummerSlam 2025 may go down as the final moment we ever see CM Punk in a WWE ring. If true, that makes Rollins' betrayal even more devastating. Not just because he stole a win, but because he may have killed a legacy. And all of it over a lie. A fake injury. A phantom MCL tear used to sell a narrative that wasn't about healing or redemption, but revenge. So what happens now? WWE fans are divided like never before. One half is calling for Rollins to be fined, suspended, or even fired. They want accountability, even if it's just kayfabe. The other half? They're calling this the greatest heel turn in 20 years. They're ready to ride with Rollins into a new era of chaos, where nothing is predictable and no one is safe. Meanwhile, the rest of the roster watches from the shadows, wondering who's next. Who will be sacrificed for the next great twist? Who will be the next to believe in the script, only to realize too late that they were never part of the plan? In a leaked locker room conversation posted anonymously to a wrestling message board, one veteran is quoted as saying, "We all cheered when Punk came back. We thought maybe things had changed. That maybe this company was finally ready to own its mistakes. Now we see, it never changed. It just got smarter." And maybe that's the most chilling realization of all. That WWE didn't betray Punk. It evolved. It adapted. It learned how to lie better. And Seth Rollins? He was the perfect vessel. Because he didn't just fake an injury. He faked hope. And in doing so, he turned SummerSlam into a cautionary tale, a brutal reminder that in this business, nothing is real except the pain. Not even the comebacks. Especially not the comebacks. The days following SummerSlam unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. CM Punk was nowhere to be seen, and Seth Rollins had returned to silence. No interviews, no podcast appearances, not even a cryptic tweet to throw the internet into its usual decoding frenzy. WWE's silence was deliberate, deafening, calculated. It was as if the company had decided to let the moment breathe, not to explain it, not to walk it back, but to make sure everyone sat with the sting. And nowhere did that sting cut deeper than inside CM Punk's camp. Those close to him described his mood as crushed, betrayed, disgusted. It wasn't the chair shot. It wasn't even the loss. Punk had been defeated before. He'd been humiliated, blackballed, even abandoned by the industry that raised him. But this was different. This felt like a personal ambush orchestrated from the top. This felt like history repeating itself, with a new face behind the blade. Insiders say Punk has gone completely off the grid. No training sessions. No media bookings. No response to the handful of superstars who've tried to reach out. One source described a voicemail Punk left for a close friend, in which he said only 6 words, "I should have known. I was a mark." A mark. That word in wrestling is sacred. It's the line between performer and believer, between the puppeteer and the audience, between the real and the worked. To hear CM Punk, the man who prided himself on exposing the truth, refer to himself that way, it signals something far more serious than kayfabe fallout. It signals trauma. Because Punk believed. That's what made his return so powerful. It wasn't just the fans who thought he was back for redemption. Punk believed it too. He believed he'd finally made peace with a company that had once chewed him up and spat him out. He believed he was part of something real again. That his legacy was finally safe. And in one devastating moment, all of that was stolen. Not just by Rollins, but by a machine. Because make no mistake, this wasn't just a personal rivalry playing out in the ring. This was corporate storytelling on a ruthless level. WWE let Punk think he was writing his own narrative, only to rip the pen from his hand at the final chapter. And the man chosen to do it? The one who always smiled through the pain. Always played the company line. Always reminded us that he never took his eyes off the vision. Seth Rollins. The irony couldn't be sharper. Rollins, once the rebel of the Shield, had become the corporate phantom. The man who once burned bridges had become the architect of WWE's most strategic betrayal in years. And now, the question looming over every arena, every locker room, every press conference is, was this the beginning of something even bigger? Because if Rollins faked his injury with the company's approval, if Triple H, creative, the medical team, and even broadcasting executives were all in on the illusion, what else have we been lied to about? WWE's new direction under Triple H has prided itself on long-term storytelling. But this wasn't just long-term. This was insidious. Meticulously choreographed deception. And the more fans dig, the more they uncover. Take the backstage reports that now suggest Rollins was never pulled from creative plans. In fact, as recently as July 14th, his name was still listed internally as active on the SmackDown talent sheets. But externally, the narrative was airtight. Medical reports, social media posts of Rollins rehabbing, an emotional Instagram live with Becky Lynch showing Seth trying to do basic physical therapy exercises. All of it, in retrospect, was fiction. The fans? Fooled. The press? Played. Even other superstars, people who've shared locker rooms with Rollins for years, have privately admitted they were kept in the dark. One rising NXT star reportedly vented in a group chat, "If they can fake that, what's stopping them from faking our pushes too?" Another veteran was more blunt. This was Vince-level manipulation. Dressed up in Triple H's suit. That comment hit particularly hard. Because for all the praise Triple H has received for modernizing WWE, this twist, may have just pulled back the curtain on a familiar kind of darkness. One where the ends justify the means. One where protecting the product takes precedence over protecting the people. And then there's Punk. Or rather, the glaring absence of him. According to sources at Fox, Punk was scheduled to appear on a post-SummerSlam segment of WWE Backstage to discuss the match. That appearance was quietly canceled. WWE reportedly gave no explanation. Sponsors pulled out. Producers scrambled to rework the format. Why? Because no one knows where Punk is. Not even his agent. There's growing speculation that Punk has gone into what insiders call a hard exile. Similar to his original 2014 walkout, but even more extreme. No press. No lawyers. No social media. Just silence. Some believe he's retreated to Chicago. Others say he may have fled the country entirely. A few fans claim to have spotted him boarding a flight to Iceland. But none of it has been confirmed. What we do know is that WWE is preparing contingency plans. They're reportedly drafting new storylines that exclude Punk entirely for the rest of 2025. And Rollins? He's back in full gear. At the most recent taping of Raw, Rollins appeared in the main event segment, flanked by two unnamed masked men dressed in black. The same kind of visual callback to the Shield that WWE has used before to tease chaos. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The image alone sent a message. The deception is far from over. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. It was the first chapter in a new era. One defined not by titles or factions, but by strategy. By psychological warfare. And Seth Rollins? He isn't just playing the game. He's rewriting it. Which brings us to the fans. The most vocal fan base in the world. The same people who once booed Rollins for turning corporate now chant his name in arenas across the country. Not because they love him, but because they respect the move. In an industry built on illusion, Rollins pulled off the ultimate trick. He made reality part of the work. One online post summed it up best. He didn't break kayfabe. He made kayfabe real again. And what of Punk's legacy now? The man who once spoke truth to power was just silenced by it. Not through censorship. Not through creative burial. But through sheer manipulation. WWE let him walk the path of redemption, let him believe in a happy ending, and then weaponized that belief against him. Now, fans are split down the middle. One half demands justice. A rematch. An apology. A public acknowledgement of the betrayal. The other half? They don't want an apology. They want escalation. They want Punk to come back more broken, more dangerous, more real than ever before. They want him to tear the curtain down, not with a promo, but with destruction. They want chaos. Closure. Carnage. But if Punk never comes back? Then Seth Rollins has done something no one thought possible. He didn't just steal a match. He stole the final word from the loudest voice in wrestling. And maybe that was the point all along. Because in WWE's new era, the one built by Triple H, executed by Rollins, and paid for by the loyalty of the fans, silence isn't weakness. It's victory. And Seth Rollins? He's not just the visionary anymore. He's the executioner. If Seth Rollins is the executioner, then who's the king pulling the strings? All eyes have turned to one man, Triple H, the cerebral assassin, the real-life chief content officer of WWE. And perhaps the mastermind behind what's now being referred to online as the SummerSlam setup. In the days that followed the event, fans began combing through months of interviews, backstage leaks, and press conferences for any sign. Any wink, any slip that could confirm Triple H's involvement in the greatest ruse of the modern era. What they found was both subtle and chilling. Moments where Triple H praised Seth Rollins' resilience. Quotes like, "Sometimes the best warriors are the ones you don't see coming." Even a telling comment during a pre-SummerSlam press call, where he cryptically said, "This year's event will change everything. You'll never watch WWE the same way again." At the time, most thought he was teasing a title change or a surprise debut. No one guessed he meant the dismantling of an entire man's redemption arc. But if he truly orchestrated it, If Triple H allowed or even directed Rollins to fake an injury, feed disinformation, and blindside CM Punk in front of millions, then this goes beyond storytelling. It's a coup. A carefully calculated move to rewrite WWE's power structure in real time, not through executive decisions or brand reshuffling, but through character assassination. And CM Punk was the target. According to multiple insiders within WWE Creative, the planning began as early as March, right after Elimination Chamber, when Punk first hinted he wanted a SummerSlam main event. That request allegedly sparked concern from higher-ups. Not because Punk wasn't drawing numbers. He was. But because he was becoming too comfortable. Too beloved. Too powerful. One former writer, speaking anonymously, revealed there was real anxiety that Punk was hijacking the brand. Not just in front of the camera, behind the scenes too. People were deferring to him, booking meetings around him, shaping arcs around his input. For Triple H, that's a red flag. He'd seen it before, with stars like Shawn, Rock, even Cena. And he wasn't going to let it happen again. So a plan was devised. Let Punk believe he was rising. Let the crowd rally behind him. Let him cut the promos, sell the merch, carry the narrative. And then, in one stroke, cut him down. Not through scandal. Not through sabotage. But through one of the greatest works in wrestling history. Enter Seth Rollins. The chosen one. The loyalist. The embodiment of WWE's new era. But Rollins wasn't just the pawn. He was the perfect soldier. Because to pull off a deception this bold, this surgical, you needed someone fans already trusted. Someone who'd earned their sympathy through injuries, fatherhood, and years of tireless main event consistency. Someone who had been mocked for years for being too safe, too reliable. Someone who was ready to burn it all down again. And so he did. But in burning down Punk's story, he may have lit a fire that reaches far beyond the ring. Backstage fallout, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, and a divided locker room within WWE's locker room. The reaction to Rollins' return hasn't been celebration, it's been suspicion. According to a leaked locker room memo, several top talents demanded a closed-door meeting with Triple H and other senior officials after Raw went off the air. The reason? Lack of transparency. One source close to the situation said it wasn't about Rollins' return, it was about how it was handled. If they can fake something that big, one veteran asked, what else are they lying to us about? Roman Reigns, still on his own hiatus after dropping the undisputed title months earlier, has remained silent publicly. But reports say he sent a direct message to Seth Rollins after SummerSlam. Its contents? Unknown. But one insider claimed the tone was icy. The two men have never been close, not truly. But there was always a professional respect. Now, some say that respect is fractured. And with Roman set to return later this fall, many wonder. Will he confront the man who just made betrayal look like art? Cody Rhodes, on the other hand, may be the most interesting piece in this unraveling puzzle. Cody, long considered the face of WWE's new legacy, was expected to headline Survivor Series. Possibly even begin a feud with Seth Rollins for control of Raw. But now? He's reportedly asked for changes to his program. Why? Because Cody built his comeback on truth. Real pain. Real redemption. Real dreams. He doesn't want to be part of a narrative that hinges on deception. One source inside Cody's camp said bluntly, he didn't sign up to be a co-star in someone else's lie. And that's the crux of it. Seth Rollins didn't just fake an injury. He faked an entire atmosphere of authenticity. He made everyone, fans, peers, executives, believe in the illusion of vulnerability, only to weaponize that belief in the most cynical way possible. It's brilliant. It's dangerous. And it's redefining what WWE is willing to do in pursuit of narrative control. The media fallout, press, podcasts, and the blurring of reality sports journalists are scrambling to figure out where the performance ended and the truth began. ESPN's wrestling analyst described the move as brilliantly immoral, calling it the most dangerous work in modern sports entertainment. On the Pat McAfee show, Seth's return was dissected frame by frame, with McAfee remarking, "I've played in the NFL. You fake an injury, you get fined, you get cut. In WWE, you get a main event." Even podcasts that typically toe the company line are beginning to crack. On a recent episode of After the Bell, Corey Graves asked, with uncharacteristic tension in his voice, if Seth was never really hurt, what else has been fed to us as truth that wasn't? What else have we helped sell to the fans that we didn't know was fake? It's a crisis of conscience. A rare one. Because in wrestling, everyone knows it's a show. But there's always a line. A space where performers and audience silently agree to keep the illusion alive. What Seth and WWE have done is erase that line permanently. And in doing so, they've created something new. Not a heel. Not a babyface. But a force. A living, breathing embodiment of everything fans hate about corporate manipulation, and yet, they can't look away. What comes next? Blood money or redemption? WWE now faces a choice. Do they double down on this new Rollins, a scheming, calculated puppet master with no allegiance, no faction, and no morality? Or do they attempt to rehabilitate him into a character that fans can understand, if not forgive? As of now, the answer seems clear. They're going all in. Rollins has been booked to close out every Raw for the next month. Not in matches, but in monologues. Backstage segments. Chilling, cerebral breakdowns of why he did what he did. The first of these aired last Monday. In it, Rollins sits in an empty warehouse. No music. No crowd. Just him and the camera. He looks down, smirks, then says, "Everyone thinks the biggest trick is making them believe. But the real trick is making them feel like it was their idea." He never says Punk's name. He doesn't have to. Because Punk isn't the story anymore. Seth Rollins is. He's no longer the architect. He's the anomaly. The ghost in the machine. The man who made us all believe in a lie so perfect. We called it storytelling. And now, as WWE begins to reshape its roster, its arcs, and perhaps even its truths around this new reality, one thing is certain: Seth Rollins didn't just return. He took over.